Welcome. Today is Wednesday, May 15th, 2013, and you are watching the Weekly Report. My name is Creighton Jones, and joining me today are Benjamin Deniston of LaRouche's research team, The Basement, and Mr. Lyndon LaRouche himself. So we'll get started.
So the Mars mission and mankind moving out into this territory is a question of mastering this whole region as a territory, and what's going to give mankind the ability to have influence and dominion over this whole domain. And it goes to the even more fundamental question of mankind's inherent necessity to progress. Every generation needs to progress. And with each successive generation, mankind can increase his creative control over the universe if we pursue the types of programs that develop that capability. And the understanding of Mars, as we've been discussing, is not just some gimmick of having somebody step foot on Mars and that's supposed to be this big victory for mankind. It's a question of mankind coming to control Mars, control the moon, control the whole inner solar system. And it's not a question of your biological presence. It's a question of the power of the human mind over this territory. And I don't even know if it's worth, it's almost not even worth mentioning, but it is getting a lot of media attention. But you have this joke, this facade out there, this Mars 1 mission, which is definitely laughable. It's also somewhat frightening. This thing's actually being promoted as some people think this is a serious option. But you have this, and to top it all off, it's a green program. You have this group of Dutch environmentalists who are now promoting this one-way Mars mission. The main guy running it has his background making windmills. He's a venture capitalist, has a background making windmills, and then he sold his windmill company to launch his whole Mars 1 program, which is a total joke. And he's saying, we can send people on a one-way mission. We'll land them there, and they'll just live out their lives there. And then they say, how are we going to fund it? Well, we'll make it a reality TV show. We'll broadcast it live on television, raise revenue from the advertising on television, and that's how we'll pay for the whole program.
And the audience is, in fact, going to be the ones who pick the astronauts who go.
Right. Yeah, and to top it all off, it's a popular opinion selection for which personalities you want to go watch and probably watch die. It's somewhat sadistic, really, but it's a total joke. So I mean, this is. But it's a good expression of the exact opposite view, because it's saying it's a purely just gimmick. It's saying what matters is if we can put one person down, they step foot on Mars, and that's what matters. It's a totally biological, sense-perceptual conception, and it's totally inverted from what mankind really is, because mankind's progress is not biological. Mankind coming to become a species of the solar system is going to be a fundamental transformation in mankind's relationship to the universe. It's going to be mankind fundamentally transforming his relationship to the universe. It's the equivalent of a species evolution. Now, just throwing some bodies on Mars is not going to make that effect. What's going to make that effect is qualitative advances of the creative discovery of creative powers of the human mind to understand the solar system as a whole, and to be able to increase the ability of mankind to act throughout this entire territory. And much of this can be done with artificial instrumentation, with satellite systems, with remote-controlled systems. You have the case of Curiosity. That's kind of just the very beginning of what mankind could be doing. And what's going to drive the whole process is not where your biological presence is. What's going to drive the whole process is what is the reach of the power of the human mind, and what is the change of the relationship of the human species to the universe as a whole, and how do you drive that change forward? And really, that's the revolution that needs to happen if mankind's really going to, with the asteroid case, if mankind's even going to survive in the solar system. But that's kind of just a more dramatic expression of a more fundamental point. If mankind's going to move to the next stage, to evolve to the next stage, it's going to require that creative shift, that mental shift.
Yeah, well, much of the problem with the way these things are being discussed now is that it's all off the shelf. The idea is we're going to take off-the-shelf technology, off-the-shelf knowledge, and we're going to see, can we push this to the limit of Mars? And it really does reflect a lack of understanding of a couple of the principles that are involved in, for example, you brought up the idea of forecasting, right? Our inability to forecast these coming objects. Now, forecasting, as Mr. LaRouche knows, as we've seen in economics, the key to it is to understand the system as a whole. If you try to forecast the future based off of the past and just try to project the past into the future, you're always going to be wrong. You have to be able to have, in a sense, an imagination, a mind which is in the future, which can understand the system from the future to be able to forecast how the present is going to evolve into that future state. And so whenever you have a system which is based off of off-the-shelf technology, which is basically a push approach, we're going to take the past and let's see if the past can push us forward, as opposed to an idea of saying, I understand the system as a future-oriented concept, and we're going to use the future as the thing which, in a sense, pulls us forward. We're being pulled forward by the future as opposed to pushed by the remnants of the past. And I think that's really what you see as a big problem in these current approaches to Mars and other things, is that's all just pushed from the past with no real conception of the system as a whole or the idea of the future as the real determining factor.
Yeah, the crucial factor here is that we are using all kinds of systems for forecasting, for management, for explaining things, and have got the thing backwards. It is the human mind which is the highest form of existence we know in terms of forecasting, for example. Then the animal level, all kinds of animation which is not human, is inferior to that. And then the most inferior is what's the so-called physical thing. Now what we have with our idiots out there, are called scientists sometimes, for lack of other words, is they would say that you must deduce this from primitive mathematics and things of that sort, a mechanical conception of mathematics. So therefore you are starting from an assumption about how the universe is organized, which is intrinsically stupid from beginning. The highest form of life in terms of power we know is the human mind. It has noetic characteristics which no animal species has. And we can actually, as I do in this note, that one note I referred to before we started this discussion, that system is the system that works. What you want to do is you want to start not from man, not from the animal or mathematics, up to the animal and up to man. You want to go the other direction. What are the creative powers of man? That's the most powerful force we know in terms of organization of the universe. So therefore we want to junk these ideas about these systems ontologically and say, look, the smartest thing in the universe that we know is mankind. And the most advanced mankind is the one we know the best, because it can satisfy our answers to our questions. And that's where the problem lies, because we are presuming and have, under the influence of ancient times, we've imposed on man an animal characteristic and say everything is proved on the basis of animal-type experience. That's the only knowledge that's allowed. You must deduce from that animal experience. And that doesn't tell you anything, or it tells you false things. So now we have ontological assumptions based on this fallacy, when the fact of the matter is only mankind is noetically creative. That is, that only mankind has been shown to have been able to control the creation of a superior form of human knowledge. That is man's ability to control the solar system, which we're aiming at. We're trying to control and manage the solar system because that's a big thing for safety for us. And therefore we want to study the noetic powers of the human mind, noetic powers which are specific only to the human mind as far as we know so far. So all this other stuff which we're getting is junk. And my problem, which I'm working on, which the next couple of weeks or beyond, depends on how what my condition is, my health condition is. We'll get that clear. That's what I intend to make clear. Look at the obvious. What is the most powerful intellectual force in the universe, known to us, comprehended, is the human mind. The noetic powers of the human mind. Because they're not fixed powers, they're not truly noetic because they are self-developing. And the self-developing noetic power of mankind is the only thing which is account for anything. So we rely upon sense-perceptual devices, which is not a bad thing to do. It's nice to have, safety things like lights and things that you can see. And all these things, they don't think for you, but they're useful, and you use them. But you use them. When they work, it's because you use them, or mankind used them. So the model for designing, understanding the universe is mankind's mind. There's no other facility we know of or that we're in contact with which is giving us any information in that direction. And that's where we have to concentrate. Forget this thing of deducing things from simple elements, which is the customary at universities, schools, and so forth, mathematics as such. And none of these things explain anything. They don't explain music. They don't explain any kind of artistic composition. And they don't explain how the human mind works to make discoveries.
Right.
Only the human mind can do that. And therefore we have degraded man to say, you're only a thing. Your masters, the people who run things, they are going to tell you what to do.
Right.
When the object is to stimulate the development of the individual human mind into a noetic mode, that is a humanly noetic mode. Drama, we had this production of which was a failure, and it was a failure because they tried to simplify things and reduce it to human, non-human values, and take great dramas and try to present them as based on non-human conceptions of drama. Backward. It failed. It was a horrible failure by a very talented person. But he tried to apply this non-human approach, and that destroyed the performance of the drama entirely, the composition and delivery of it. So the problem is we do not realize that classical artistic composition, when properly appreciated, is the driving force of human ability to create. It is not working from the bottom up, it's working from the top down.
Yeah.
And man's mind is the top.
So, yeah, I think we'll close up shop for the day, and we'll see everyone back here next week.